Welcome to the Containment Zone. Welcome to the Containment Zone, where some anomalies shatter walls and others never touch them. Some creep, some stalk, some wait. But SCP-372 doesn't wait. It moves. So fast, so silent that you'll never see it coming, because it lives in the corner of your eye. SCP-372. Designation: the peripheral jumper. You will never see its full shape. You will never hear it breathe. But every now and then, when the light flickers, when your head turns, you might catch just enough to question what was there, enough to wonder if it's still watching you from just outside your vision. Its first appearance was not announced with blood or chaos, just confusion. Security teams at Site-06 began reporting movement in sealed corridors, flickers, twitches, motion sensors disrupted without entry logs. But no sightings, no footage. Only one thing was recorded: personnel glancing to the side, pausing and whispering, "Did you see that?" But no one did. Not fully, not clearly, only partially, only peripherally, and only once. Then, it was gone. Until it wasn't. SCP-372 was captured by accident. A containment breach in an unrelated wing triggered a lockdown at Site-06. D-Class personnel were redirected through unused maintenance shafts. One subject, D-9342, stopped mid-corridor. He turned his head, paused, then ran. When recovered, he refused to speak. He wouldn't enter lit areas, wouldn't turn his back to a wall. When questioned, he said, "It was crawling on the ceiling, but when I looked up, it wasn't there." The Foundation deployed infrared and motion capture drones to the area. One recording lasted just 6.3 seconds, but in that time, the drone captured over 40 points of kinetic interference, each moving faster than the eye could track. A presence, a shape, something thin, fast, non-reflective. It was moving between walls, ceilings, light sources, but never directly in front of the lens, only around it. Eventually, through a combination of thermal sweep traps and electromagnetic distortion fields, SCP-372 was cornered, caught in a steel capture mesh. But even then, the field team didn't see it, only the impression of something writhing against the light. It was sedated, contained, classified, and placed in a reinforced humanoid containment chamber, lined with multi-angle tracking systems, 360-degree thermal detection, and overlapping fields of motion-sensing light. It should have been secure, but every time a guard turned away, their vitals spiked, eyes darted, hands trembled. Some reported hallucinations of flickering movement in their peripheral vision, and one said, "I don't think it's in the room. I think it's everywhere else." SCP-372 is vaguely humanoid, very vaguely. Its skeletal structure is thin, hyper-elongated, and biologically improbable. It moves with a contortionist's grace, but at speeds far beyond human muscle coordination. Height, estimated at 1.5 meters. Limbs, long, multi-jointed. Digits, excessive, ranging from 5 to 8, depending on the limb observed. Skin, translucent and smooth, offering partial camouflage when viewed at an angle. But the defining trait isn't how it looks. It's where it chooses to appear. SCP-372 doesn't walk into your field of view. It slips just beyond it. Every movement occurs just outside your line of sight. Every shift, every twitch, every breath, always peripheral, never central. It uses your own vision against you, The Foundation believes SCP-372 exploits a neurological phenomenon, motion-based peripheral detection. Your brain is designed to notice sudden movement on the edges of your vision. An ancient defense mechanism, but SCP-372 uses this signal as cover. It triggers just enough response to let you know it's there, but not enough to let you act. It's not hiding. It's stalking you from the blind spot you can't close. In one study, a subject was placed in a transparent containment chamber with 372 locked in the same space. Full 360-degree cameras. Live observation. Nothing was recorded, but the subject began to sweat, breathe faster, glance repeatedly to the left, to the right, always just behind the camera. When asked what he saw, he responded, "It's not in the room. It's behind the reflection, waiting for me to blink." Eventually, the subject screamed, pressed his face against the glass, and begged for the lights to be turned off. He didn't want to see it anymore, even though he never really did. Because SCP-372 doesn't need to be visible. To be present, it just needs to make sure you can't stop wondering if it's still there. SCP-372's original containment protocols were textbook: steel walls, overlapping surveillance systems, live monitoring, every corner covered, every shadow lit. But none of that mattered. 3 days after initial capture, 372 was gone. No breached doors, no damaged walls, all camera footage intact. Except that something was different. Reviewing the footage frame by frame, analysts noticed minuscule variations, shadows that flickered too quickly, air distortion near reflective surfaces, and at exactly 2:34:17, a security officer scratches his temple, pauses, and turns around. There was nothing behind him, but he said out loud, "Did you just touch me?" No one had. A secondary containment unit was constructed, this time built with curved walls and no flat angles, overhead laser mapping, multi-sensory calibration. 372 was recovered 3 weeks later, in the sub-basement of Site-17, curled silently in an unused storage room behind a rack of discarded uniforms. It didn't resist. It didn't flee. It waited until the escort team turned around to radio in the find, and when they turned back, the room was empty again. SCP-372 is not invisible. It simply knows how to be unseen. Tracking attempts have revealed that it doesn't move like a predator. It moves like a reaction. Every muscle twitch, every moment of distraction, it uses that gap dash, that tiny pause, to shift position. It does not confront. It doesn't even flee in the traditional sense. It simply relocates to where you are not. In multiple instances, guards reported feeling eyes on them, only to turn and see nothing. A second later, their own motion detectors would spike, but always from the opposite direction. One team used full-body motion tracking suits to follow 372's path. Each time it moved, they lost signal for less than half a second. But in that time, it had crossed rooms, leapt between walls, passed by their heads, close enough to brush their hair. Containment specialists now operate under a new assumption. You cannot catch 372. You can only corner it when it lets you. SCP-372 doesn't attack. It doesn't bite, scratch, or crush. It waits, and then it undoes you. From the inside out, personnel exposed to prolonged proximity report escalating symptoms, loss of sleep, heightened alertness, startle reflexes triggering at random, a growing reluctance to blink, and eventually, paranoia so intense they begin removing reflective surfaces from their quarters, because that's where they see it, in the corners. behind glass, in the twitch of a flickering monitor screen. Most of them never saw 372 fully, only in fragments, only as an impression, in the moment before they turned their head. One subject, a security officer stationed outside its second containment cell, lasted 8 days. No direct encounters, no breach, just exposure. By the end, he had torn apart his bunk, stuffed the corners with foam insulation, refused to speak unless every light was on. He reported hearing movement in his blind spots. Small, wet, quick. He was later found unresponsive in his room, facing the corner, eyes wide open, lips moving silently. When asked what he saw, he whispered, "It doesn't hide. It waits for you to blink. It's always there, just one motion behind." Another subject kept a personal journal. Each entry became shorter. Day 1. Saw something flicker behind the console. Might be a loose panel. Day 3. Noticing flashes of motion, always when I turn away. Day 5. It knows I can't see it. Day 7. I'm seeing it even when my eyes are closed. The final entry was not written with a pen, but etched into the wall with the subject's fingernail. I am the blind spot. Psychological reviews suggest that SCP-372 does not need to inflict physical harm. It destabilizes perception, undermines confidence, breaks your trust in your own senses. You don't have to be attacked, to be ruined. You only have to wonder if that flicker you just saw, the one at the edge of your vision, was it? Because the moment you ask that question, it already is. SCP-372's physical traits are traceable. Its bones bend, its limbs stretch, its skin refracts light in a way that mimics its surroundings. But none of that explains its presence. Because 372 doesn't just avoid your eyes. It exploits the very system your brain uses to decide what's real. Several Foundation neurologists have proposed the same disturbing theory. SCP-372 isn't hiding in shadows or ceilings. It's hiding in processing delay. Your eyes see everything, but your brain edits out what it deems irrelevant or too fast to be important. 372 lives there. In the space between image and recognition, 1 millisecond of uncertainty. That's all it needs. Experiments with strobe lighting and visual filters show that when humans are subjected to hyperperipheral motion cues, the brain fills in blanks. Sometimes with nothing, sometimes with too much. SCP-372 seems to know this. It chooses when to be noticed. It reveals just enough to create fear, then vanishes back into cognitive blind zones. It may not even be fully physical. Some believe 372 is a perceptual parasite, a thing that cannot exist unless ignored, an echo, a ghost of motion, a thought that crawls around the edges of reason. One report, now sealed, suggests that SCP-372 may not be alone, that there are more entities like it, existing just outside measurable perception. It was found scrawled into the side of a dismantled lab terminal. If 372 is the one we noticed, how many have we not? The Foundation is not equipped to answer this. Because how do you test for what you can't see? How do you contain what you only notice after it's gone? And how do you defend against something that doesn't attack? It just waits for your attention. To slip, SCP-372 remains in containment. Technically, its current chamber is spherical, seamless, bathed in omnidirectional light, motion sensors calibrated to nanosecond intervals, no corners, no shadows, no lines of escape. And yet, Staff still report the feeling of being watched. Not all the time, just occasionally. Just enough. Just when they forget to look. Foundation logs list SCP-372 as neutralized multiple times, each entry revised, because something always moves. Somewhere in the background, somewhere just behind you, SCP-372 doesn't want to be seen. It doesn't need to be heard. It needs only one thing: your uncertainty. Every time you flinch, every time you think you saw something, but tell yourself you didn't, it becomes more real. Because 372 is not a monster. Not entirely. It's a symptom of how limited our senses really are, of how fragile our certainty is. And it's not the only one. The Foundation has created new protocols, not to contain SCP-372, but to train agents to ignore it, to accept that some flickers at the edge of vision aren't mistakes, they're visitors, quiet, still, waiting for you to forget they were ever there. Thank you for reviewing another anomaly in the Containment Zone. And if something moves just out of sight, if your pulse quickens and the air feels a little thinner, don't turn around. You wouldn't see it anyway.